This is Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast, proudly brought to you in association with award-winning independent drinks retailer Real Drinks. You can buy online at realdrinks.co.uk and in-store at Twickenham, Notting Hill and Maida Vale. A very warm welcome to episode number 15 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us. It's me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
And we'll be talking all things craft beer with you as usual. What's coming up, Dave?
Plenty, as ever. As I've said on previous episodes, we like making new friends. The ones that we had a good talk to are two guys who have featured very briefly before, and that is Freddie and George from Jeffersons. They were on a drink along of the previous episode from our sponsors, Real Drinks. We had their Dipa. Was suitably impressed, so wanted to find out more about them. We had a chat, we had some more beers, and found out that they are very good indeed.
So good, in fact, that you even enjoyed their goes.
I did. I only had it very recently. I didn't have it on the chat, for full disclosure, purely because I didn't want to
hate it,
ruin things. But, it was good. As goes is go. It was really nice, and for me, that's quite a recommendation.
Fantastic. So you've got Jeffersons coming up, and we have a few beers with the guys from there, and also we've got Solvay Society popping in for a chat and the lowdown on what they've been up to. They were involved in a crowdfunded not so long ago, which we mentioned here on the podcast, and no doubt they'll be telling you all about that and lots more. We've also got our usual features, Hype or Tripe. We'll be looking back at our favourite beer since the last episode. And as usual, what should we kick off with, Dave?
It's two breweries that neither of us have had before. I'm going to kick things off. I've gone up to Northumberland. I seem to have a real draw to that sort of part of the world at the moment. And it is Ganyam, who are very, very new to the scene. I only remembered about these guys because they popped up on a Facebook group that they'd set up, and you could join their newsletter to sort of see when they were launching. So I did that, and then lo and behold, got an email about 6 weeks ago to say they'd sort of got their first beers out there. So I bought the 6-pack that they were selling, 3 beers, 2 of each. I'm going to have the New England IPA, Bright Green Field. And for those of you who are wondering, Ganyam in Cumbrian dialect means to go home. They did originally start out down in South London, so says their website, and then they moved back home, which is Kendal in Cumbria, to start out properly. So interested to see how this is. I think they've already got somewhat of a loyal following from what I've seen. And they could easily be the kind of people we might want to talk to more, because it very much sounds like the kind of story that you and I would be quite interested in.
And I'll tell you what, I'm quite excited because I see they claim to use mountain fresh water in their beer. So this, I know you're very big on your water profiles. This could be quite interesting.
Yeah, they've gone quite classical with Bright Green Field in terms of hops-wise. It's Mosaic, Citra, and then the slight difference is Enigma. So I'm expecting pretty classical nose and hopefully pretty classical taste. It's not the most powerful of noses. It's fruity without being OTT, and it's a little bit faint almost, if that makes sense. It's not the fruitiest of New England's. It is full, I think. There's more Mosaic and Enigma than there is Citra in here. That would be my guess. And if I'm wrong, I apologise, Ganyam. It's full, but it's not super, super fruity.
Okay. That Enigma's another one of those, in my experience, another one of those hops that can dominate a little bit. I get the impression it might be doing just that.
I wouldn't have been surprised almost if you'd said to me that was a Mosaic, maybe not Simcoe, but it was Mosaic with a tiny amount of Galaxy in it. It's on that sort of flavour. I'm not getting like pillowy, soft, loads of fruit salad type New England IPA. It's a bit more robust than that.
What percentage alcohol did you say it was?
This is 5.5.
Okay.
Not a heavy hitter in ABV at all. Yeah, I don't mind it. It's perhaps a little bit more muted than I thought it would be. With my New Englands, I do like them sort of super fruity, and yes, I think I had a certain expectation of it, and it's perhaps not delivered quite to that. But that's not to say it's not a bad beer. It's a perfectly nice, solid introduction to them. I've got the pale ale, and I've also got the porter.
Oh, that'd be interesting to see how the porter stacks up.
I nearly went for the porter, but I know I did a dark beer last month.
And you do love your pales, don't you?
I do. I always think, for me, they're a really good way of sort of seeing what a brewery is trying to do. I can't run away with getting too excited about it, but it's a solid enough introduction. I'm interested to see what else they're going to do, and it could be that they're going, one of the other beers might be a bit better than that one for me, and I might get a bit more out of it. And what else they have coming down the line. I can see since I've placed the order, they've actually added another beer to the range. So
that's good then, that there's new beers coming in on a regular basis by the sounds of it. 'Cause however much we don't like to admit it, we all love to try different beers all the time, don't we? So when a brewery's giving you a new one every few weeks, that's what we want, really.
Yeah, exactly. I see they've got another IPA, which that's the one I didn't get, called I would say if you see these guys selling, try one and see what you think.
It sounds like a solid introduction to a brewer you haven't tried before. I'll tell you what, well, why don't you sort of leave that in the glass? I'll open the one I've got here, which is from a brewery I'd never heard of before. It really was new to me. I was in a local little cafe/bar, and they sell a few cans in the fridge, and I spotted it in there, spotted the artwork from a distance. It's a bright orange can, and I went and had a little look, and I saw this from Maule Brewing. I had to look them up, and they're based in Northampton.
How are we spelling Maule?
Maule.
Okay.
And it seems they've actually been going for 7 years, believe it or not. Started out in 2014. They've even got a tap room as well, which is open every Wednesday to Sunday. It always staggers me how a brewery that's quite established and has got that sort of local presence hasn't made it onto our radars. I can never quite understand how that happens. But interestingly, since I saw this beer I've seen it in a few other local places, so maybe they're sort of seeking to get their wares out a bit further now.
Well, while you've been doing that, I've just had a look to see if I've had any Maule, and I have.
Oh, right, okay. What did you have?
I had their Pilsner, or one of their Pilsners. No, sorry, I had their lager. I had Mandarina Lager.
Now, I bet you like that.
Untapped would say I wasn't blown away.
Yeah, well, you can be very harsh.
Well, I know when I had that now, yeah. I had that, I would have had it just over 2 years ago at a beer festival in Ipswich. They were on as a guest somewhere. And my comment was just along the lines of perfectly good when the sun's out, which is sort of what a lot of lagers fall into. So
this is interesting because beers can evolve a lot over 1-2 years. And the perfect example, I recently was in Birmingham. We went to the Indian Brewing Company. It was a lovely sunny day, sat outside. They got a few beers which they brewed themselves, and I went for their lager. I ordered it and I looked it up on Untapped. And I knew various people who checked it in over the last few years. And the Untapped marks it had got varied from sort of 0.5 up to 3.75 over a number of years. It obviously been getting better and better. So
just sort of refining it. And
exactly. And it came out and it looked amazing and it tasted amazing. I think I gave it a 4. And as you know, I'm not even a lager fan. So the point being that these, just because something was okay 2 or 3 years ago, it may now be a lot better.
Yeah, and that's come through our conversations with some of the brewers as well, but they're forever tinkering and tweaking and sort of not satisfied. But back to what you've got now. So what have you got coming out?
This is Wonder Pale Ale. It is 4.9%. It smells massively fruity. We've got Simcoe and Mosaic, the classic combo, but topped off with some Summit, which you don't see a lot of. Now, Summit...
That's a new one on me.
Right, but it's used mainly for bittering, so I guess there's not that much of it in there, but it does have sort of citrus aromas as well.
Okay.
So you can see why that would go quite well with the Simcoe and the Mosaic. What's it taste like? It's not as hazy as I'd want it to be.
It's quite a deep orange colour, actually, for a beer of that strength. I didn't expect that. I thought you'd have more like what I've got. I'm sort of in the...
More yellowy and hazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. There is a bit of bitterness there at the end. Not too much, that's for sure. Huge fruit on the nose. And to echo what you said about the one that you had a couple of years ago, it's a nice beer when the sun's out. I think I would agree.
So it sounds like it's one of those. It's inoffensive. Quite happily drink it.
Yeah.
Will you remember it in 3 weeks' time?
Yeah,
Perhaps not. But that's not necessarily detrimental. It's just that's what it's doing. It's filling its brief of being a nice, easy drinking beer.
Absolutely. That's what it sets out to be. It says here it's got sweet berry fruits with a piney finish. Yes. Light and clean bitterness. Yes. Balanced by a smooth malt body. Yeah, absolutely. Does what it's supposed to do. Can't argue with that.
Daftaboutcraft.
Okay, so regular listeners to the podcast might remember that a few episodes ago we had a beer from Jeffersons, which was a collab with our sponsor Real Drinks, and we absolutely loved it. It was a double IPA and it tasted fantastic. So we've tracked the guys down at Jeffersons and we've got them on the podcast right now. So how you doing to George and Freddie?
How you doing?
All good, thank you. Yeah,
good to meet you. Yeah, indeed. We were so impressed with that Dipa. We had to get you on and hear your story. Really, find out how you got into it and how long you've been doing it. And 2017 you started, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. So 2017 is when we started our commercial brewery. So we've been homebrewing together for quite some time before that, and it was really just like a hobby that we fell into, and we've been doing it for quite some time. How it sort of come about was we brewed for our brother's wedding. Again, at the time, this was just hobby. There was no business intention whatsoever. But the beer went down a storm at the wedding, and then we had people asking to brew for their events and their weddings and things like that. And I think that was sort of the light bulb moment that sort of pushed us to take the leap of faith.
A lot of places, it seems like, started in 2017. I don't know why, but whenever we do a little bit of looking into it, it's all about that same sort of start point. So obviously you got your way in just from homebrewing, and then how quickly did it accelerate from there to where you are now?
I think so. Basically, 2017 or 2016 rather, when we were doing the business plan and getting the finance in, we kind of felt that we might have missed the market a little bit. There was a lot of new entrants. Yeah, missed the boom. There was a lot of new entrants. We were initially looking for like a 10 barrel to go into, and we just felt like, we kind of missed it. So we wanted to start small, test the waters a little bit. And so we decided to roll out with a small 200 litre kit. And it kind of helped us, being with a homebrew background, to kind of learn and develop a lot. We've still got the 200 litre kit, but we started with 4 240 litre tanks, which is really small nano brew when we first set up.
I think we were, or God knows, might still be, the smallest brewery in London. What we lack in like the brewery system size, we just constantly brew on it, which is, I mean, it's not ideal. It takes up a lot of time, but it just allows us to get as much beer out as possible. So we just increase our tanks and just run the hell out of the brewery.
So it sounds like it's non-stop then. Do you have several brew days a week then, or are you sort of...
Yeah, so we have 3 625 litre tanks, and we've got a few other smaller tanks. So to fill those 600 litre tanks, we have to triple brew. So like this morning, we have to start at 6 and we'll probably finish around 6. And we'll do 3 brews, triple brews, and we'll do that at least once a week. So it's
probably about twice a week we'll do a triple brew. This is obviously more reason why we are planning to get to where we are on an upscale, because, I mean, it's fine, it's manageable, but it just takes up a lot of time and a lot of man hours when you could be just obviously doing one brew or a double brew, and it gives you a lot more time to focus on other parts of the business, really.
So is it just the two of you doing all this brewing, or is there other people involved as well?
It's just us two, yeah.
We're doing the delivering, the brewing, the packaging, the label designs, everything.
You must be knackered.
Yeah, it keeps us on our toes, definitely. But every week's different. Some weeks are very stressful. Some weeks are very good.
It is good, the fact that you just dip into every side of the business. Like,
yeah, so you've done every sort of job within the business, haven't you? You've done the whole lot.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
What happens now in the next few years?
So now we're just basically trying to get all our ducks in order, because we're planning to upscale. We want some private investment, basically. We want some private funding to get a new site, a tap room rather. We don't have a tap room at the minute, which is a huge part of the business model that we've been lacking. We
talk to quite a lot of people, and they say, the key is
if you're going to do it, you've got to have a tap room now.
The key is the tap room. Yeah.
I agree with the tap. It makes it so much harder to obviously do what you're doing without that revenue stream of of a tap room coming in, so many of our customers like reach out and ask, where's your tap room? When can we come down for a pint? And it's obviously lovely to hear, but then it's also a bit of a kick in the teeth because you think, oh God, we really need to get this moving and get this going. So that is the next stage. Upscale the brewery, looking maybe like a 6 to 8 barrel, an 8 barrel, sorry, with even bigger tanks, on-site tap room. We basically want to make like a destination point. So have like street food vendors and things like that. So just a spot you can come down to and just be there for an afternoon and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done the businessy side of things, but of course we're here to talk to you primarily about the beer. And as we touched upon, we were both really impressed with that Dipa, which I'm afraid I've forgotten the name of, and I hope it's having a rebrew because it was brilliant. I think at the time I said I thought there was a Verdant influence in there, but not in a bad way, because I find Verdant have that veggie nose, which I don't like, but that didn't. And I'm now drinking the Bright Side Pale, which lives up to the name in terms of brightness of it. I haven't seen a pale that sort of shade for quite a while, and it's really nice. And I could smell the fruit as soon as I sort of cracked the can on it, and it was sat sort of 12 inches away from me. Dave's got the sour as well. Feel free to tell us about both beers, but also who does what and who likes what out of the beers as well. Does one of you have a sour taste? Does one of you like IPAs? Or
we should say that as we talk in here, one of you is drinking the goes and the other is drinking the pale. So, or do you both like? Yeah. Do you both like everything?
We both enjoy the same type of beers, and that's what I think works well. We like hop forward beers. We like sours. In the winter, we like a very approachable stout, an oatmeal stout. We're not into imperial stouts, anything too heavy on the dark side. We both love to drink the same beer, which works very well for us.
I think it helps in terms of brewing, just brewing what you like. And I feel like you can get more out of it rather than just brewing something to seem popular or go with how the market is. I think it probably does show that if you're not keen on that beer or you don't love those styles of beer, then it probably will show in the end product.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because putting a pale into the pale market, as you know, it's a pretty saturated market, but this does stand out. And I mean that genuinely, because one, the colour, and I haven't had a Citra and Simcoe beer where I can really smell and taste the hops as much as this for a while. Did you guys put a lot of hops in this? Is it quite heavily hopped? Or
so we've actually brewed this on the first lockdown. We had just started rolling out can then, and it's only got 12 grams a litre, which I suppose is on the higher end for a pale. Citra T90, Simcoe T90, 12 grams a litre. We do 3 gram a litre whirlpool of Citra. Yeah, it just kind of pops. I think it's to do with the hops that we're using. In the last sort of year, we've decided to really buy the most freshest hops that we can. Yeah. So it's all 2020 hops now.
So Dave mentioned that he thought with that Dipa we had before, there might have been a bit of a Verdant influence. Whose beers do you like to drink, and who have you learned things from?
I would say your big hitters, George and I like. We actually went and bought a few beers over the weekend. We had some Verdant, we had some Daya, I had a Rivington. That was
oh yeah, Rivington are good.
I hadn't actually. I might have had one ages ago, but I haven't had one for so long, and that really hit the spot. To be honest, I feel like a lot of breweries now are catching up in terms of the standard and the quality of beer. And there's so much of an offering. I feel like the consumer really is sport for choice.
Yeah, once when brewers like Daya were, the go-to brewery for a pale, now there's a lot of other people they've caught up.
People are like coming out of the woodworks. Yeah. And you've got like your Gravity Wells, your drop projects, and
which is great to see, because all of a sudden there's more competition, and presumably that will then spur brewers on.
It definitely has spurred us on in the last 2 years, drinking other breweries' beer, realizing how good it is. Our main focus for the last 2 years has just been quality. That's the one goal, and we just believe everything else will follow in place if you just focus on quality and consistency.
I think that does stand out. The Dipa, going back to that, what struck me, as I say, along with where I thought perhaps the influence was just the standard of it for a sort of brewery I'd never heard of. You guys say you're sort of a two-man job, and that it didn't taste like that. It tasted like it could have easily come from a big hitter, which I hope take as a compliment because that's how I mean it. But it just it tasted really professionally brewed, as does this one, and it was sort of like, oh, okay, these guys have a bit about them. Want to find out more. So, what can people look out for and try and get hold of next?
Next up, we have a Mosaic Cryo Dipa, and then to be honest, it's a lot of what we've been doing. So your session IPAs, your pale ales, your New England IPAs, things like that.
You're really mindful of the fact that people like us, we want a new beer this week, next week, every week. We don't want to drink the same one twice. We want the next one.
Yeah. So, but within releasing a beer every week, you do find the big hitters and the sort of recipes that work really well and people love.
Yeah.
And so we do bring back some of the golden beers which go down the store. And the Bright Side was one of those. We brewed that in the first lockdown.
This was the third run now.
It went straight away, sold out. Then we brewed it a week later after it sold out, went again. And so, we just thought we'd wait a while and then bring it back in the summer again.
And when you rebrew something, do you tend to tweak it a little bit more to make it even better than the previous time, or do you just leave it alone and do it the same?
We're always tweaking. Well, I like to tweak recipes a little bit with the water treatment, slight grist percentages changes. With this particular beer, we used to use Windsor yeast, but now we're using Verdant IPA yeast. We are using that quite a lot. Over the last year, we've been experimenting with
different yeasts.
A lot of different New England style yeasts. I do have to say that it has sort of come up trumps. It's a sort of powerhouse yeast, and it's consistent, chucks out really nice esters and a lovely haze, and we're really happy with it.
I've got to say this goes that I'm drinking as well. I'm very pleased you sent me 2 cans. I might go and open the other one shortly. It's really good. Really nice.
It's a nice little palate cleanser. It's very refreshing.
Absolutely.
The colour of it is fantastic as well. I mean, I'm not much of a sour person. I leave that to that's Dave's department. He laps them up, but I mean, I can see from the colour of it on our cameras that it looks brilliant. It's so vivid. It'll stand out a mile in most places.
Well, we just released a few weeks ago alongside it this year. Interfusion's been a seasonal of ours the last 3 years, and it always goes down a storm. We only brew it once a year, and it's a spring beer. And once it's gone until the next year. But this year we brewed Double Fusion. So it's an amplified version. It was 7.5%. I believe Interfusion has 110 grams a litre of raspberry puree, and Double Fusion had 170 grams a litre. So it's a lot more bolder and more deep with the raspberry.
Is that still available, the Double Fusion?
That's sold out. That one, yeah.
Yeah.
Can't believe this. Yeah. That sounds amazing.
Who knows? Maybe a rebrew soon.
That'd be nice. That would be good. So you mentioned before about you were looking for a private investor to help you move on to the next stage, and with the tap room and what have you. Did crowdfunding cross your mind at all? I know a lot of people have been doing that recently.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably more swaying to crowdfunding, but for equity, giving away equity rather than rewards based.
Right.
For what our upscale that we want and the funds that would be needed would be quite large. We'd want a sort of big unit with a lot of seats.
Something to really grow into. And
so we definitely need to crowdfund via equity. We probably won't be going down the private investment.
No, to be fair, yeah.
It'd be crowdfunding. And we know it can sometimes be hit and miss. I mean, was actually meant to roll that out a year ago, but COVID hit. So we've been waiting, sort of working away, badgering away with the brewery and the business plan. And we're now feeling like we're in a place to sort of move forward with it again.
I think a lot of people out there are really keen to get involved with crowdfunders. There's a lot of them out there. Solvay Society in London, they did one recently. They got their target.
They smashed their target, didn't they? Because I think they went, it was 8,000 or something, wasn't it? And they really nailed it very quickly.
Yeah. Breweries in my area have done it and got it easily. So I think there's a real thirst and appetite for it, and people will hand over the cash,
Yeah, I feel like if you've got that support locally and in the community, it always helps. People are always willing to get behind you.
There's always that element though of being a bit scared of putting out there and seeing people's reactions and if they would be very supportive or not. It's always in the back of your mind a little bit, that worry. We kind of have to move forward and upscale. We can't stay in the brewery that we're at. It's triple brew days and we're selling out of beer in a week or two, and we just need more capacity.
I hope you go for it, because I think you'll do it. If you're selling out of the product within 2 weeks, hopefully that shows there's the market there and the appetite there.
Realistically, it probably won't be till early next year, all going well.
And so, as you move forward, will you presume you'll take more people on to work for you? But that must be a bit of a worry as well, because this is your thing, this is your business, and you put everything into it. It must be a daunting prospect to think that you've got to bring in outsiders at some point.
Oh no, I can't wait to get someone to start.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just been the two of us, for 4 years in the little brewery. We'd love a bit more company. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And so you've got a website now.
So it's www.jeffersonsbrewery.co.uk. We set up the web shop, obviously, beginning of lockdown, and it's been an absolute lifesaver. Got our social media, which is at Jeffersons Beers, and that covers Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Big thank you there to George and Freddie from Jeffersons Brewing in the south of England. They're going places. They're going to be big. Another brewery that you heard about on Daftaboutcraft. Now, this is the time of the podcast where we usually tell you about the beers we've been enjoying drinking since you last heard from us. Now, in the last few weeks, Dave B hasn't been drinking so much because he's got a very, very special day coming up very soon in fact, and he'll tell you a bit more about that later. So he's not going to do this section, it's just me, and my favourite beer that I've had was just a few days ago actually, and it was in the Coracle pub in Ironbridge in Shropshire, and they got on an 11% stout, had a few drinks there, then went for this one at the end, and it's from the Fallen Acorn Brewing Company. It was a double milk imperial stout, 11%, called For Comfort, for Solace. And there is some coconut in there, and often with these coconut beers you might find that coconut dominates a little bit, but this was so beautifully well balanced. Wow, it was a real standout moment, one of the best beers I've had for some time, and it was a straight 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, gold stars all the way from me. It was really, really excellent. Like I say, beautifully well balanced, lovely, decadent chocolate in there, but all gelling together perfectly with nothing dominating. It was just a lovely one to sip away at. Although I say sip away, but it was so good, it did make you want to drink it as quickly as possible, really, just to enjoy that flavour and get it down. Superb. For Comfort, for Solace from Fallen Acorn Brewing. And if you can get hold of it, then do that. Now, we've had a nice few contacts from our friend Mark Ramsey in Aberdeen, and he sent us a little voice note telling you and us what he's been enjoying drinking recently. So over to you, Mark.
My name is Mark, and the guys from Daftaboutcraft, your number one podcast, is asking me what has been my favourite beverages recently. And the answer is simple: the Mills Isla Brut. Yes, it's £20, but it's worth the £20. It's a luxurious smoke bomb with a plethora of tasty fruit treats, along with a kind of piney, resiny finish. What else have been enjoying? Obviously, the Overtone beers have been fantastic. What also liking recently was the V4 by Fierce, one of my favourite brews in Aberdeen. And also what I've been enjoying recently, American-wise, the Hell Farmstead. I've also all the Treehouse beers I've had recently, like Doberganer has been really good. And I've got Very Green coming soon. I've got my fridge. I'm looking forward to that. Also been lucky to try Monkish, Other Half, The Brewery, Cycle, you name it. But at the moment, I'm looking forward to trying more new UK breweries.
So a big thanks to Mark Ramsey there from Aberdeen. Now, if you'd like to do a Mark, get yourself on the podcast, get your voice going out there to people all over the world. And I should just say, we've now been listened to in 40 different countries across the globe, which is tremendous news. So if you want somebody somewhere to hear what you've been drinking, drop us a voice note any way you want. Email daftaboutcraft1@gmail.com, on our Instagram feed, anywhere, and we'll get it on the podcast just like Mark there. Now, we've been talking to somebody else recently from Solvay Society. Have a listen to this.
Hi everyone, I'm Polly. I'm the sales manager for Solvay Society. Super excited to be part of Daftaboutcraft. So thank you, Dave and Dave, for inviting us. So let me tell you a little bit about Solvay Society. We started in 2014. So the brewery was founded by Roman, who originally has a PhD in physics. So you'll guess the name Solvay comes from the Solvay conferences, which used to bring the greatest minds of physics and chemistry together in Brussels. And that actually led to a lot of very important discoveries. So that's where Roman takes his inspiration. So he uses his background in science in his brewing, but also in our branding and just generally in our lives as a brewery. We actually have quite a wide range. You'll have guessed it by me mentioning Brussels already twice, that we're a Belgian brewery. So Roman is from Brussels, as I mentioned. You probably have noticed that I'm also from Belgium. I'm more from the southwest. I'm from a place called Maule. It doesn't really have anything interesting there except from coal mines. There we have good beer, actually. I grew up close to the Dupont brewery, between Dupont and Chimay, if that helps. So yeah, our little brewery got started in 2014 in Ilford. That's in East London. It's nearly Essex. And very recently, we actually had quite a successful crowdfunding campaign, and that helped us move our tanks from Ilford to Leytonstone. Our tap room has already been open for 2 years, and now we're super happy to have our brewery just next door. So we're located in the archways just off Grove Green Road, in the nice little hotspot in Leytonstone. Close by, we've got the Philly Brook, we've got Pretty Decent, we've got Leytonstone Tavern with the Heathcote, a lot of really cool little craft beer spots, and Gravity Well, our friends. So we're really in a really cool place. Yeah, obviously really happy to have a brewery here now, just to have our little brew pub. Aside from moving a brewery, well, we've been obviously busy brewing. So we've got a wide range of Belgian beers. Hanmas is our double dry hopped Brussels style pale. It's like about 5%. We've got Minimize, Table Saison, goes to 3.2%. Which is quite light for a Saison, but this is what we wanted, because a normal Saison would be about 5 to 6%, but we wanted something lighter and easier to drink, especially for the summer. So it's quite floral, herbal. It's really lovely. After that, we've got Superposition, which is our wheat beer / IPA. So it's a double dry hop wheat beer. Also absolutely lovely, like a really nice introduction to Belgian beer for those who don't really know it, or just a really nice sessionable drink with plenty of flavor. Then we've got Era, our double dry hopped barrel aged Saison. That is the last beer brewed in our site in Ilford, so it's the end of an era. And then we've got a golden sour ale, Bière du Hainaut, which Roman created by taking the bacteria from his surroundings in Ilford. I just told you he's a scientist, and he's gonna use that in his brewing. We also have a few other beers. I've got Postdoc Fallacy, Bière de Garde, 7.2%, hazelnut, toffee, apple, almond, really lovely. And then the Tritium, which is a pink peppercorn and rye triple. I think it's the one beer that the most recognizable when we talk about Solvay Society. So yeah, 7.5%, which is a bit lighter than what I'm personally used to, but really well balanced in between the sweetness of a triple and the pink peppercorn, and then the acidity coming from the rye. And yeah, and our plans for the future. Well, we're surviving the summer. Obviously, we're super happy to have our tap room open again, and to have our customers and our regular customers back. And we're gearing up to bring some more beer, obviously, because we've got our new brewery and our new brewer, Mark, and he's been really, really busy brewing new beers. And so hopefully in a couple of weeks, we should have some more beers for you guys. Setting up to go to Brew London at the end of July, which is another really, really exciting thing. We'll be sharing a stall with Heaney from Northern Ireland. And we're obviously working on our launch party for the new brewery, but at the same time kind of waiting to see how the restrictions go, because we would like to do it when there's no restrictions, because the more the merrier. Waiting for the train to go. You can hear we're in an archway. This is the overground line coming over my head. The one that goes from Gospel Oak to Barking and back. So this is where you can find us, Leytonstone Station or Leytonstone High Road Station. But I do hope you like trains, and if you really like trains, you should come to our tap room. Okay, train's gone. You're welcome to the tap room anytime. We've got a web shop for those who live a bit further away from London, and of course, any questions, just give us a shout on Instagram or on Facebook, or send us an email, or send us a pigeon. I kind of like pigeons; they're kind of cool, and I'll make sure to get back in touch with you. Yeah, thank you guys for having us. Thank you for listening, and we're looking forward to meeting all of you soon.
Excellent stuff indeed. Thank you very much, Polly, there from Solvay Society. Now, Dave B loves Belgian beers. I quite like trains. We've got to get ourselves down to Solvay Society. And actually we have, because we participated in their crowdfunder. So we've already got some credit stacked up there to use in the new tap room. So we'll be looking forward to testing that out fairly soon. Now, it should be drink along time, but bad news on this latest edition of the podcast. There is no drink along this time because, unfortunately, COVID has struck Real Drinks, our sponsor in London, and one of their shops has had to close, and the shop that's had to close because several staff have contracted COVID is the one from which their beers are distributed. So Real Drinks couldn't get the beers to us. Apologies wholeheartedly to anybody out there who's bought them and got them nice and early, ready for the podcast. We can't drink them with you, but please do enjoy them. Let us know what they were like, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the feature will be back on our next edition. And a big get well soon to all of the guys down there that have been affected by the virus, especially to Jack, the social media guru, who we have a fair few dealings with. Get well soon, Jack.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
It's time for one of our favourite parts of the podcast now. Regular listeners will know that when you hear that music, it's time for Hype or Tripe. And we've got not one but two big beers to go under the microscope on this episode.
So, because I live nearer to London, weirdly, apparently I can still get hold of some beers that Dave can't. We have had this sort of geographical disparity before, but I have managed to get Pressure Drop's first ever tipper called Fancy, and the idea was we were both going to try it, but unfortunately your neck of the woods, you ran into some logistical problems with it and weren't able.
I couldn't seem to track it down at all, so what I've done, I've gone for one of Holy Goat's beers from their very first release, which we've been looking forward to for a long time, haven't we? We actually, when Holy Goat came onto the scene last year, when was it, Dave? Last year, wasn't it? End of last year?
It was sort of October, November time, I think.
It was never their intention to release any beers until May 2021, but you could pre-order them, so I pre-ordered them, but you could also book tickets to their first birthday in October 2021. So we did, didn't we? We've got tickets to go to Dundee, and they were bought at a time when we hadn't even tried any of their beer. So this will be interesting.
50% of us still haven't. There is every chance I'm going to go to a beer festival, all being well and all permitting, and I might never have had a beer from the brewer, the headline act of it, which is quite weird but quite fun at the same time. So
we should probably tell people you're in a very good mood, actually, so that this beer may get marked up because of your good mood.
Yeah, I am buzzing because as at the time of recording, it's June the 14th, and I appreciate not everyone may have got the news they wanted to on this day. And when you hear this recording a week later, things will have settled down a bit. And obviously, lockdown in England has sort of been delayed for a few weeks. But the one, from my perspective, key tweak was that weddings were allowed to have more than 30 guests, because I'm due to get married on July the 8th. So it's been months ramped up of nervousness and waiting and uncertainty and anxiety. So to actually have this release and to know that in sort of 3 weeks' time we can get married as normal as possible really is brilliant. And I'm just super excited about it. And I did say that we'd record on this day if I was in a good mood to do it, and luckily I am. So we've taken full advantage of it.
We should tell people as well that your wedding was postponed 12 months ago. You couldn't get married last year.
That's true. I was one of the many, we were one of the many couples that were affected by it the first time round. So we were all set to get married last July. Sort of made quite an early decision to pull stumps on that one, and then we sort of thought we should be all right in roughly just over a year's time, and then we still ended up having to really sweat through it the last few months. But luckily, touch wood, fingers crossed and all that, we are now through it. And come July the 8th, we'll get married. So, yeah, can't wait.
So, given all that good news, if he doesn't like this hype or tripe beer, there is no hope.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Then it really hasn't fulfilled itself, because you're going to rarely get me as in a good a mood as I am now. But hopes are high, because Pressure Drop I'm a big fan of anyway.
Absolutely.
I think they've carved a very good niche at just lovely hoppy pales. You know, pales is their thing, although we've both had really good stouts off them, and I don't think they shout about them enough.
They don't. And sours as well, you know, they can do those with a great deal of skill as well. So, you know, they're known for their pales, but they cover the whole board pretty well. So
they sort of said on their website that they'd been badgered into doing their first ever tipper, and it feels like a natural progression for them. But what they've done is they've started with one of their Dipa recipes, and then they've adjusted the malt bill, increased the hops and turned up the booze, and it's Mosaic and Citra, classic combination. This is the bit that's going to make or break it for me. It's a sparing edition of Sabro, and I do not like Sabro. But in fairness to Pressure Drop, and certainly they seem mindful of it judged on the website, it says it adds a melon softness without veering into coconut brackets, as Sabro sometimes does. So
we'll see here whether their touch is a gentle touch.
Exactly. Now, I will say on the nose, there is a hint of the coconut. It is quite melony, actually. Really melony.
So usually you get that Sabro and it's all you can taste, isn't it? It just overtakes everything else in the mix.
The Sabro definitely doesn't take over, so I'm going to have no issues finishing this. It's boozy. I can tell that's 10%. It's not one of those where it's so sweet or sort of soft that it hides it. There is a bit of a rawness to it. I can tell the strength of it. I get the Citra. I get a bit of Mosaic. I like it. I could do with it being ever so slightly fuller. And I do mean ever so slightly. But I really like it when it gets sort of a bit full, creamy without getting too sickly. And it's just ever so slightly not quite there. And the head went to nothing. Like dissipated quick.
I know what you mean about sickly. Some of those tippers can fall into that category, can't they? That you can't drink a lot of.
Yeah, I don't want it to be sweet, sticky booze, but I don't mind it being sort of creamy, full. I want to keep going back and drinking it. This isn't quite in the creamy, full thing. It is nice. Thin's not the right word, but it's just not. It's not quite full.
Well, it seems to be going down very well, though.
It's perhaps got a little bit fuller there as I've just topped the can up, maybe. So I might have been a little bit hasty, but no, it's nice.
Should we give it? It
is nice.
Give it a few minutes. We can come back to it, and I'll go in with mine. As we said, this is Holy Goat from Dundee, and Holy Goat, you probably know because they've been everywhere. But their founder Johnny was one of the original founders of the sensational Vault City. When we found out that the original guy behind Vault City
when you found out.
Yes. When I found out, you couldn't care less because you hate sours. I was very excited. You know, this is going to be Vault City Mark II, but this is very different to Vault City because I think the beers are going to be more experimental. They released 3 beers last month in May. There was a golden sour ale called Goat Wizard. a Flanders Red aged with blackberries and tayberries called Crimson Queen, and then a Russian Imperial Stout, which is something you wouldn't expect to find Vault City ever doing, although they have done a couple of stouts. And it's the stout that I've got. It's called Faux Hammer. It's 11%. And interestingly, I've just noticed here, it's actually produced under contract at New Barnes in Edinburgh.
Oh, okay. And New Barnes I would associate with doing easy drinking lagers and pales at the real sort of 4-5% tops.
Yeah. So I don't know whether New Barnes actually had any input or it was just where the beer was produced. I don't know, but
it pours like a beast. You've actually nailed the pour for once.
Yes, I have. I didn't even realise it.
That's a lovely pour.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Scenes. Right, so this is 11%. It's billed as being a big, old-school Russian Imperial Stout with a heavy roasted, deep texture.
It's worth pointing out, actually, if they're saying old school, that won't quite be to everyone's taste. Because I think a lot of people now think of an Imperial and they want it to be Imperial, but it's adjuncts chucked together to recreate something, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've reviewed them ourselves. We'll review more and we'll enjoy more. But the actual traditional roots of it are a very, very different beer, and that might not be to.
So this is essentially just a straight up big stout, relying massively on the malts to do the business here. It smells very sweet and roasty, but not that sweetness that you get with those adjunct laden stouts that we've talked about before. Now, the head's dissipated somewhat. Let's try it. Sort of licorice tones in there. A lot of roastiness. This hasn't
Does it feel like 11%?
If I was to drink the whole lot straight off, yes, it would do, yeah. Absolutely. Right. I'd know about it. It's one to sip away at, I think. It's a sort of beer that you would find in a nice craft bar and you'd have a third of it and you'd really enjoy it. Not to say I won't enjoy the whole 440, but I might have to take my time with it.
It sounds like exactly what it's supposed to be then.
Absolutely, yeah.
You go to somewhere, like you say, if we're in that scenario, you go to somewhere, you've had a few, you clock early that they've got an 11%er on tap, but you don't want to have it until the end. And then you have it at the end and it's glorious, but you only want a third or maybe a schooner tops. Yeah. And then that's it.
Yeah. But it's very good. No, that is good. It's sort of sweet without being artificially sweet. It's got that maltiness, a little bit of licorice, smoky. It's just what you'd expect it to be. Hype all the way.
Brilliant. I will follow you in, actually, because this, I would say, actually does show a sufficiently light touch. That Sabro, it doesn't, as they say, without veering into coconut, and it doesn't. Ever so slightly tries to get there, but it can't. It's just reeled back, and it actually makes for a really interesting beer because it's really nice to have something so strong, yet something that tastes predominantly of melon. I think that shows just how strong Sabro is as a hop, because it has still taken over, even though they've used a light touch with it.
But I think by the sound of it, they've shown their expertise at how to deal with a hop that can easily overpower.
Yeah, I've not got a coconut beer, and I won't name names or anything like that, but I know if other brewers had done something like this, I'd be pretty confident I'd know exactly what I'm getting, and it's just going to be a coconut beer. And that's credit to Pressure Drop, who don't feature very often, if they even have featured on the podcast before. And that's not because they're bad, it's just they don't necessarily do that much which falls into the wheelhouses for the pod. Like, they're well established. We have talked about their stats when they've done them and stuff, but they're just a really good brewery who are quietly going about their business, and fancy absolutely shows why they're a quality outfit.
And I think they've proved here that they can try something different, something new to them, and they can pull it off straight away.
Yeah, I'd hope they'd be encouraged enough to maybe do some other tippers. And, it sounds like obviously people have been on at them saying, do a tipper. I guess maybe the next stage would be do a quad or do a tipper off a new recipe or something. If this is what they can do using an existing recipe and tweaking it, I would say go for it.
Well, this is a rarity. Hype times 2.
Yep, absolutely. No complaints here whatsoever. This gets full thumbs up.
And if you do want to go to Holy Goat's first birthday party, having not tasted any of their beers like Dave,
which I might now do just out of a point of principle, because I think it would be quite enjoyable to just turn up and try everything blind.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Tickets are still available, I believe, so get yourself onto the website.
That's all for this episode of Daft About Craft, but the two Daves will be back with another episode on July the 12th.
You have been listening to Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast, proudly brought to you in association with award-winning independent drinks retailer Real Drinks. You can buy online at realdrinks.co.uk and in-store at Twickenham, Notting Hill and Maida Vale.